Hello, KillerRoo here, and today we are going to talk about Ultima, also known as Ultima, First Age of Darkness. Every Dungeons & Dragons gamer, at some point, has wanted a video game, a computer video game version of Dungeons & Dragons. This has been very hard to do and has been tried many times with varying levels of success, but Ultima was one of the first to get the closest. Ultima, released in June of 1981, then rewritten in assembler code and re-released in 1986, was one of the very first. It's been ported to. It was ported at the time to nearly every system available, and is still available today. You can get it at Good Old Games for probably a couple bucks. I think I got it on a sale for almost nothing. At the time of its release, it was $39.95. Today's dollars equivalently would be around $100, so very expensive. But if you had a computer system in 1981, you probably had the money for it. It was released in 1981 to pretty high acclaim. It was called Impressive. It was also called the best RPG game for the Apple II, which was the system it was originally released on and then ported to a whole bunch of different systems by 1986. The gameplay was actually, for the time, very good. It was straightforward, up, down, left, right arrow keys to move, single letter commands to do various actions. You got to choose your character at the beginning of the game and set his or her stats. You got to choose a race and a class, which would affect your stats in various ways. The storyline was relatively immersive. It came with a storybook that outlined the overall story for you and gave you some hints as to what you were going to be seeing along the way. The game was difficult but not impossible. With appropriate mapping, you could do fairly well. My take on it was that for the time, the gameplay was easy enough, but it was a challenging game. That's a good combination. The story is immersive, especially if you read through the manual, and I highly recommend that if you do get the game, print out and read the manual. It's worth it, or read it on a PDF if you want to save some trees. It's an interesting story, quite odd. I don't like the forced fantasy tone of it, but by the same token, it's entertaining. It's what you would do in a D&D game, especially if you were a teenager in the 80s. It was what you would do whilst running through the forest. I see, that sort of language. While now it's very hokey, at the time it was actually really impressive and kind of made you feel like you were in the game. And they used that style of language throughout the game. Great graphics for the time, for what they were working with. 4-bit style graphics. You had an overland map, you had a dungeon map. The dungeon style gameplay was a very line-drawn 3D style, which, while not great, was, for the time, amazing. And procedurally generated dungeons. The dungeons, while they would be the same throughout the game save that you were playing through, every time you restart the game, the dungeons would be generated procedurally, so they would be different every single time. So if you die and start a new game, the dungeons you would have to remap. The dungeons feel much bigger than they actually are. There's lots of monsters to be killed. So between the 3D dungeon, the 3D space battles, and the overland map, and then the star map, you had quite a variety of graphics in the game and gameplay in the game. How does it hold up? Pretty well. It's okay. It's not something you would want to be like, hey, come watch me play this game. Hey, come check out this game. The graphics aren't there for that. But as a curiosity, as somebody who enjoys seeing the genesis of some of these styles of games and where other games got their influences, this is definitely worth checking out, at least for a couple hours, and just to see what gamers had to deal with back in the day. You didn't have these massively graphical games and back in the day. It was all very left up to your imagination, and it relied very heavily on the story, so the story had to be there as well. So it's worth playing if you're interested and curious about those sorts of things. I wouldn't expect you to spend a ton of time on it, though. It's one of those games that you might play for a couple hours, get the feel for it, understand, maybe die a few times and realize, oh man, this is hard, and then put it aside for Ultima 2, Ultima 3, and so on if you're playing through the series, or if you just want to kind of get a feel for what these games are like. I would say yes, play it for curiosity's sake, to get a glimpse into what gaming was like in 1981, 1986. But otherwise, I would watch somebody else's review. Spoony, the Spoony Experiment, does a fantastic review of, I believe, the entire Ultima series, and he, while vulgar, is hilarious and worth a watch. So, this is going to go on my good list. With the lists, this is the first game I'm reviewing. They're going to fall into two categories: the good games and the avoid them games. This game, Ultima 1, will be going into the good list, and then as I review more games, it will either be bumped down, or the new games will come in underneath it. So, and from this, I should eventually have what I hope to be my, top 10, top 100, top 1,000 games, and also my bottom list. Ultima 1, First Age of Darkness, whatever you feel like calling it, will definitely be going in the good set of games, and right now, it's number 1. Hopefully, I'll be able to do more of these. I'm still learning how to edit videos. I'm still learning how to record videos, how to make interesting content. At this point, it's probably not very good, so bear with me. I will get better at this, or I hope I will get better at this. And until then, so long, and thanks for all the fish. This has been KillerRoo with another game review.